And we are now live.
Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order at 3:04 p.m. And we'll go to the agenda here. Approval of the agenda is circulated. Approval of the February 16th, 2022 agenda. Be it resolved that the agenda for the February 16th, 2022 meeting of the Grafton Communal Water System Committee be approved as circulated. Could I have a mover, please? Mike?
I'll move.
Okay, Mike, and then seconded by John. John L. All in favor? Okay. Number 4, approval of the minutes. You have to excuse me too. These are my old glasses, so if I read something wrong, I should have brought my new prescriptions. Approval of the minutes. Minutes of the December 15th, 2021 Grafton Communal Water Committee meeting. Be it resolved that the minutes of the December 15th, 2021 Grafton Communal Water Committee meeting be approved. Can I have a mover, please? John R., seconded by Mike. All in favor? Passed. And before we go to the business arising from previous minutes, I would like to welcome our newest member. Sitting down there in the bottom is Nicole Leach Behoon. Is that how you pronounce it, Nicole?
You have it right. It's Behoon.
Behoon, okay.
Yeah.
Welcome. Nicole is the new treasurer, and we're really excited that she's on board. We're happy that she's here and for her first water committee meeting. Welcome, Nicole. Okay, so business arising from the previous minutes. Is there any business arising from the previous minutes?
I just
John?
wonder if we have an update on item 6, business arising from the previous minutes. And that was to do with the county, and I believe Troy was going to ask them about sharing the cost.
I did reach out. I have not heard a response, so I'll follow up immediately with Adam from the county.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other business arising from the previous minutes?
I have one other one, and that's on page 8, number 8. I think we were proceeding with the biogenic toluene testing. And I believe that was going to start on the Friday before, after our last meeting. I just wondered if that started. And also wondering if are we going ahead with the source water protection request from the Lower Trent? And that was to change the water supply map. And do we have to do that?
Maybe I can answer those. I will be discussing the biogenic toluene results. So we did proceed with that. And as for the source water protection, I suggest we leave it as is for now. We only have to change it if we replace the well.
Okay.
Okay, any
Yep, that's
other?
all I have.
Okay, thank you, John. Any other business arising from the previous minutes? Being none, we'll move to financial reports. The budget to actual to December 31st, 2021, be it resolved that the budget to actual to December 31st, 2021 be received and filed. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Mike, seconded by John. Nicole, you're new to it, and is there anything you wanted to say about it or present or talk about?
At this point, I really haven't had a good chance to look at everything. What I can tell you is that we do have everything in for 2021. We did have a cutoff on January the 21st. We've also made an accrual, which is included in that for the GeoCamp invoice that came in that included some items from October to December. So those are all in there. The only thing that we still need to do is do transfers for reserves, and that's for the whole municipality. So that's something that I'm working with our previous treasurer, Carol, to get that done. And so if you're noticing that there's anything that should or shouldn't be there with regards to reserves, that would be why. So hopefully for our next meeting, I'll have a little bit more to say at that point.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions or anything before we receive and file it about the budget to actuals? Being none, then all in favor? Passed. And 2022 draft water budget review, notice of motion. Do I read this all out, Yolanda? Okay. In accordance with section 13.11, notice of motion, the Township of Alnwick procedure bylaw, the Grafton Communal Water Committee member, John Logal, hereby files a notice of motion to be included on the agenda for the Grafton Communal Water Committee, which is scheduled to be held on Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. The notice of motion reads as follows. Notice of motion, Grafton Communal Water. Whereas the township owns and operates the Grafton Municipal Water Services, and whereas full water service includes the production and distribution of safe and reliable potable water for close to 400 customers in the hamlet of Grafton, and whereas the township is responsible for future capital and operating expenses of the water system so that current and future customers' needs are met, and whereas since conception of the water system around 1990, the municipality has continued to add to the capital reserve in order to replace the water treatment plant, including the facility, production equipment, and the distribution lines that will all be replaced over the next 50 years. And whereas this cost for capital replacement will be in the tens of millions of dollars, and whereas over the last 3 years, thousands of dollars have been taken from the capital reserves to investigate a water quality issue and the need to replace one of the 2 operating wells, and whereas the above 2 projects were not included in the capital reserves projects, and whereas a study to determine capital needs for the Grafton Communal Water has not been completed or updated in about 5 years, therefore staff be requested to update Grafton Communal Water Committee with the following information. Current reserves versus anticipated reserves. Compare current capital needs now versus from the last study. Investigate and report water rates with 5 to 10 local municipalities. And recommendation for water rates to be charged annually from 2022 to 2027 that will ensure reserves will meet the needs for capital replacement. And that the above information be available for review at the April Grafton Communal Water Meeting. Okay, now what do I do, Yolanda?
I believe a motion could be placed on the floor to bring this forward for debate if you guys wanted to have a conversation about it.
Okay, does somebody want to make that motion so
I'll
we
make the
can,
motion.
John make the motion, a seconder? And John R. will second it? Okay. Maybe John L., it's good for you to discuss first since you brought up the motion, if you can explain it to us a little bit.
Sure. And you'll have to excuse me because I wasn't specific enough maybe on some of the years and some of the dollars and everything else, but I'm trying to go a lot by memory. But I know that 3 or 4 years ago, we were below the reserves that we wanted to have in there. And not that much, but we were below. And I believe it was because we hadn't built enough houses, added enough properties. Since then, we have added enough properties over the last 3 or 4 years to get us back on shape again. But what really concerns me is the fact that we took quite I don't know exactly much, but I would think probably at least $100,000 out of that reserve to work on the couple of well issues that we had. And I don't believe there's anything being put back in there. And as a resident of and user of the water system, I don't think we want to get ourselves into a bad position that in 5 years from now, when I don't know exactly what it is, but I believe it was 5 years from now, all the equipment was to be replaced in the system. I just don't want us to get into a point where we can't afford to put something in, or we'll have to afford it, but to get us into a real bad spot. So I think what I really like to look at is see where we are now and what we have to do to get us back in line. And if that means raising the water rate some this year, then we'll have to do that. That's basically where I'm coming from.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Mike, and then I'll get you next, Troy.
I'm just looking for clarification, and maybe Troy can clarify this, or Pat. But it seems to me that we did a water rate study not too long ago, like when I would say within the last 2 years, and that there was some thinking around how we might scale up. So I would be open to reminders from Troy or from Pat on that. Could you comment, please?
Pat, do you know when we did it? I do believe it was done a couple of years ago as well.
Yeah, it was done before I came. So
Yeah.
I've been here since just 2021. But the exact date, I don't know. And we'd have to pull that information for you. But I can
Okay.
tell you that you also passed a bylaw to establish your rates over the next 5 years. And I believe that started last year.
That's right.
And was that, Pat, was there not a consultant or somebody last fall, or was it in the spring that presented us with the water rates, and then they talked about some of these concerns that John have, the investigating the piping and the stuff like that? I can't remember the company. Was it a consultant that presented that to us?
I believe so, but again, I don't know off the top of my head. Sorry.
Okay.
So maybe sorry, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if Yolanda could find that for us and maybe send it to us all again.
If I could just interject, we did receive a water rate study in January of 2021 from Infrastructure Solutions, Inc.
There.
So we
Where was
did
that?
hire Infrastructure Solutions, Inc.
Yeah, that's the company that's doing all our asset management for the township.
Yolanda, I didn't catch that. What year did you say that was done?
January 2021.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just last year.
Okay, so I'm sure that if he did anything like he did before, he looked at all the equipment needs, as well as how much money was coming in and how much reserves we had, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're way ahead of me then.
It's all there.
Okay,
So if we could redistribute, and I would like to be refreshed again, and I'm sure John would like to see it for the first time. So maybe we could start by just sending that through to all of us again.
And these things that John's asking for, is this something this is just done by our staff, Pat, Yolanda? It's not, we don't have to go out for a consultant, right? These are things that can be done by our staff. It's kind of a short deadline. I know that, and maybe Troy, you want to speak on it because Nicole's quite new and everything else with staff changes, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll comment on that. And you're exactly right. Just with, Nicole has only been here a week and a half or whatever, so she's just getting her feet wet. We still have all of the budget due for the entire township. So I think April is a bit much right now. I would like to extend that with committee's permission to, May or June or something. Let us come back, with a really good report. Let us do the entire township budget and stuff like that. But we can get the information, but I just thought April was a little bit too soon for us, especially with the turnover and staff. And, we have a lot on our plate right now. So But we will get it done. I just think April might be a bit much.
Go ahead, John.
I think a lot of those questions will be answered in the 2021 report.
That is
Yes, it
correct.
will.
Yes, it will.
And if we have that, I'd like to maybe hold the motion for now until we get that. And at the April meeting, if there's something we still need to do, then we can bring
That
that
works.
back for the April meeting.
Yeah,
and give
I think
us
you're
more
right.
Instruction. How's that?
That's good.
Perfect.
Okay, that's good. So Yolanda, if you can send it out maybe to all the board members again and we can peruse it. And then like John said, at the next meeting, we can bring this back up again. And if there's anything else to discuss about it or more information, then like Troy said, maybe we could look at for May or June. That's okay with you, John?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what would you like me to do? Revise the motion then?
I don't know. I'm going to Yolanda. You're the expert.
Okay.
Yes, if we could just have a motion directing staff to provide you with a copy of that updated water study report. And we'll move forward from there. So just a motion to forward that information to all members of the water committee.
Can I have a mover?
I'll move.
John, a seconder? John R. All in favor?
One question.
Oh, sure.
Are those other members, are they part of the members yet, or have they been, I guess they've been approved, but they haven't showed up yet, have they?
No. Yeah, they've been approved and they haven't shown up yet. Yolanda might be able to answer. I know some of them had prior commitments or something to this date. I'm not sure what it was exactly.
Actually, I believe Pat has been in contact or sent some emails out to them to remind them of the dates and times of the meeting. Pat, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. One of the members is unable to attend the meetings due to the fact that they're in the daytime, and the other member had a commitment that he's unable to attend this meeting, but plans on attending our next water committee meeting.
Okay. So Yolanda, if you could send that to them also, then that would be great. Then they could peruse it too. And then that way in our next meeting that we have, they're up to date too.
Okay.
Okay, and I think we did vote on it, did we not? We voted?
You need to call the vote.
Okay, all in favor? Passed, okay. Thank you. Number 8, projects, current updates, constructions, and other. We have a correspondence from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Grafton drinking water system inspection rating, IRR, and risk methodology document. Be it resolved that the correspondence from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Grafton drinking water system be received and filed. Can I have a mover, please? John, a seconder. John R. Any questions on that before we receive and file it? Nothing. All in favor? Passed.
Sorry, Councillor Booth, if I could just interrupt. Under the financial reports, there was another item that I believe got overlooked. It's the 2022 draft water budget review.
Oh,
There is,
okay.
yeah, there is a draft water budget there in the agenda package. So I'm not sure if discussion wanted to be had by all members.
Okay, good. So let's go back to 14 to 15, 22 draft water budget review. Let me just look for it here. Any questions about it while I'm searching here too? Go ahead, John.
I was noticing in the in that report, it didn't have the revenues for 2021 were not the same as the previous ones, and I believe it's about $40,000 or $50,000 that showed up in the final report from the year of 2021 that hasn't been transferred onto the new one yet. So just want to make sure we didn't miss that. I think it was about 220 was on the first report, and it should be 269. If you're looking on the revenues on I think it was about page 14.
And repeat that again, John. I'm here on the page now.
Okay, just a second. I gotta pull it up. Page 14,
Yeah.
revenues for 2021 actual, show $200,000 and $221,000 actually. But if you look at the previous report that we approved, which was the final of the 2021, it's showing 260,000. Which was on page
11.
11. Oh, no, it's on page 11, yes. See where it says $269,000? That was the actual for 2021. So all I'm saying is that that figure there should actually be on the budget for next year.
Yeah, and I would say anything with the financial right now, you know what, maybe give Nicole a little more time to go over it, you know, again, new, she really hasn't went over it. So maybe if we could just put it off for the next meeting, and by then Nicole will be able to go over it and maybe comment.
Yeah.
I can comment, Lee, if you'd like, that absolutely the actuals compared to budget are the most up to date. The 2022 budget that you have there, I have been working on the whole municipality budget, and the comparative actuals need to be imported into this document again. As I said, there were some accruals and things as well, obviously some revenue items that need to be updated in this 2022 budget document.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good what Troy said, and that gives Nicole some time to go through it and everything. And we can discuss it at the next meeting. Okay, any other issues with the 2022 draft water budget? As we
I
see.
just wonder, through
Go
you,
ahead, John.
Mr. Chair, just wonder that the only capital projects there were for the roof and the SCADA update. Is that all the capital projects that we're doing?
Adam, can you answer that?
Yes, I can speak to that through the chair. We do have other capital projects that will be carried over from the previous year. The things that come to mind specifically would be the repair of the driveway at the bulk water station. And additionally, there is a provision for a dehumidifier. There also, there has been raw pipe work that's been scheduled through Lakeland, and we're still waiting for a time when they can do the entry when COVID dies down a little bit. We've been prepping for that for some time. Those capital projects will all occur in 2022.
So Adam, is that the pinhole leaks in the piping that we were looking at replacing?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So they'll be added to the 2022 capital items, the budget there, right?
I would assume that they'll be capitalized with the 2021 budget, but I'm not 100% sure. Larry would have the firm information on that, but they will be completed in 2022.
Okay, so does that gets communicated to you, Nicole? Do you talk to Larry about that, making sure we're not missing anything, or?
I can follow up with him, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So Yolanda, we don't need, do we say we're receiving and filing for now, or it was just a discussion on that, or what?
You should have a motion to defer, Mr. Chair, to the next meeting.
Okay, so can I have somebody move that will defer it to the next meeting, and then that gives Nicole a chance to review it all? By Mike and seconded by John. All in favor? Passed? It's okay, you're good. Okay, moving on. And we were talking, be it resolved that the correspondence from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, re Grafton Drinking Water System Inspection, Rating Report and Risk Methodology document be received and filed. Can I have a mover, please? Mike, a seconder? John R. Any discussion? All in favor? Passed. 22-2008, be it resolved that the correspondence from Bruce Highcamp, Geocamp Limited, re the Hamlet of Grafton Well Production Monitoring Program, 2021 Annual Report, permit to take water, 5086-9B PM4A, be received and filed, and further that the report be forwarded to the Council of the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman. Can I have a mover, please? Mike? Seconder, John L. Discussion? Bruce? Go ahead, you're up.
Go ahead with it, okay. So I guess everybody's aware there's a water taking permit associated with the Grafton wells. And with that water taking permit, there's monitoring conditions. There's 2 wells that are in service, both to about 77 meters deep. The monitoring program includes water level measurements of about 20 wells 4 times a year, annual collection of samples from 3 dedicated monitoring wells for BTEX and general water quality or general chemistry, and preparation of an annual report. And I've been working at that those monitoring conditions for, I guess, the past 20 years. This year, and things kind of blew up a little bit. It's been pretty normal, let's say, not uneventful for the last 20 years, except for recently, in that we detected BTEX at one of the monitoring wells, and at very low levels and still within drinking water standards. But it's highlighted that there's 3 issues that have come up with the monitoring program. One, the 3 main issues are we have elevated ammonia with production well 1, and we've been actually looking at that one for the last few years. We kind of knew that was a problem. And so to address that, then we're looking at pumping a bunch of wells in the area, and we deployed water level data loggers, about 20 of them. And then we observed drawdown at the landfill, one of the deep monitoring wells. And then the third issue was BTEX at one of the monitoring wells that we sample every year. So it was a busy year to address all those 3 items. We had to bump up our monitoring of those monitoring wells, and then an interpretive report was prepared. We had the Ministry of the Environment involved. A bunch of action items were brought forward, and so this annual report that you see, it's in the agenda, and I just showed it. It's swelled up this year to almost like a telephone book thickness. We've looked at the landfill, we looked at historical water quality, all the additional sampling. So we kind of got a handle on everything. The ammonia we knew was an issue, so we just kind of we're monitoring it. Then there's the drawdown in the landfill. It's not really capturing any landfill leachate or groundwater below the landfill. It's more or less water wants to pop up in the deep aquifer, and so it's kind of supporting the landfill, not drawing it back. But the BTEX continues to be a problem, in particular toluene at MWI. And so one of the last, let's say, remaining to-do action items from the Ministry of the Environment meeting was the biogenic toluene. And I think John touched base on that. And so last sample, we collected additional samples for biogenic toluene. And biogenic means that the toluene might be naturally occurring from buried peat deposits. It was a very expensive analysis. It was about $3,500-ish. The results came back inconclusive, but I kind of looked at it, although they say inconclusive, they detected tetrachloroethylene, which is a dry cleaning solvent, which it kind of, puts us in the, that it's not, naturally occurring. I would say that their determination saying it's inconclusive, I'd say that it's kind of conclusive that it's not biogenic toluene. But I think all this does is, that's a very odd one to find dry cleaning solvents. I think our next sampling event, we have to look at the VOCs again and expand it into tetrachloroethylene. And so I guess the results of the biogenic sampling didn't come out in our favor. I was hoping that we could claim it as biogenic, naturally occurring, and then it would just be a simple monitoring program. But it hasn't clarified what exactly the source would be. I think we've eliminated all the potential sources, like the landfill. There was no VOCs, no BTEX at any location in the landfill. So the landfill doesn't appear to be the source. We made improvements to the well itself so that if there's any surface water runoff, it still is present. The only other source would have been, let's say, if we had a spill in the area and it doesn't appear that there's been any spills. I guess the last possible source is that landfilling activities that are taking place near the 401. And the Ministry of the Environment's investigating, but I doubt that that would be the cause of it. So it's still inconclusive what the source of the toluene would be. All we can do right now in the ministry, I think, is in general agreement. We're just an increased monitoring program to quarterly rather than annual. And the next monitoring is scheduled for March, next month coming up. So my annual report, though, summarized all the work that we did last year, put it all in one format, and hopefully we don't have to repeat all that work again. Hopefully we can scale back all the monitoring and just keep it to like a quarterly inspections and sampling. I don't know if is there any questions on the annual report?
Go ahead, John.
John does.
My first question is, and I referred to it a couple times through your report, the Centennial Well. What does that mean?
It's just a monitoring well. It's just a sentinel well. In between, like.
So that would include the monitoring wells 1, 2, and 3, etc.
There's 3 of them. There's 3 sentinel wells or monitoring wells that are like early detection wells if there's a problem, and they were installed halfway between the production wells and the landfill. And the purpose of those wells is to serve as an early warning in case there's capturing leachate or from the landfill. But the toluene doesn't appear to be present at the landfill, yet we're getting minor detections on monitoring well I, which is, let's say, intermediate depth. I think it's about 65 feet deep. And compared to our production wells at 250 feet deep. You know, there's a substantial difference in depth. Then we even have a shallow one, let's say is like 15 feet or 20 feet deep. So it's those 3 wells are the sentinel wells slash monitoring wells. Early warning, I think, is also another name that.
Okay. If I could ask another one to you,
Yep.
Mr.
Sure.
Chair. You mentioned, I'm going to take, I believe this is the way you put it, drilling a new well would not guarantee contaminant-free water.
Well, it would not guarantee ammonia free water. Like it, there's a funny thing with the ammonia. One well has higher ammonia than the other, and it makes it a nuisance for treatment.
Yeah.
My concern is that we drilled. There's interest in replacing the one well, and we might find low water ammonia levels, and it might be easy to operate. But my concern is that there's no assurances that we won't find low ammonia water and that it won't change over time.
So are you saying right now that we should, it's premature to start drilling a new well?
I don't know if we have any other options. The only other option is to treat for the ammonia on PW1. We've looked at different options. We've looked at,
Yeah.
that's why we got into monitoring well deep, potentially hooking up to that one because the water quality appeared to be good, low ammonia in that one. But that's when the Ministry of the Environment stepped in and said, as per your monitoring conditions, your permit to take water, you'd have to replace that well anyway. So if we have to replace that well with another monitoring well, we might as well replace it with a production well that in the location that we like. So I think that was one option. And then we were looking at test well 3. We've reduced all our options, you know, for an alternative supply. So the only other option, the only 2 options that I see right now to address the ammonia would be to treat it or another production well. But
Okay.
I have reservations, I guess, about another production well. Might be acceptable, but for how long, and what if it isn't acceptable?
And as I recall, the ammonia was, to treat it was very expensive too.
It is, yeah.
Is that?
So I guess my question, Bruce, is if we do drill another well, do we not do testing and everything like that? And so you're saying when we first do the well, it's acceptable, but over time, it could get ammonia that is going to put us in the same.
I'm not saying it will, I'm just saying what if, you know?
No, that's what I mean. So when we do drill, if we ever do, we wouldn't accept that drill if we knew right away when we drilled that the ammonia, we would go to another location, right?
If we knew, see, it's tough to, you know, build a well and get that sample. You know, we almost have to build the well, then do the sample. You know, the water quality afterwards. You got to build it and then find out there's a problem. It's a big investment to and a bit of a gamble.
Yeah, isn't it like $300,000 or $500,000 to drill a well?
Yes. Yeah, they've gotten really expensive these days. The quality, the construction requirements have changed. They're now asking the Ministry of the Environment wants to see stainless steel casing. They want to make sure that it's pressure grouted in place from the bottom of the formation all the way up, which production well 1 is, except for the stainless steel. It's cemented in place, like it was built properly. So, but the cost of production well construction have really increased in the last few years, even before the pandemic.
Wow, I find it that we potentially could spend that type of money and then end up with the same well or worse.
Yes, and that concerns me.
Like, are we, and maybe John, you could even answer this, or maybe Troy, are we relegated to just a certain area where we can put this well? Is it going to be near the two wells that we have right now? Can it be a bit farther away so we have a better, I don't know, like.
Well, here's what what I've been proposing is, if I'm going to put a production well in, we know that PW2 is good and it's been constantly good for the last 12 years, let's say. That's why we favor PW2 because it has lower ammonia. So, and coincidentally, the monitoring well, the Sentinel well between the landfill and PW2 is of similar quality. So the two, so I would suggest you put the new production well, if we're going to go that route, right in between the two known good wells.
The funny part about it is PW1 and PW2 though are only 100 meters apart.
They are, and the odd thing is that when PW2 pumps, water levels go down in PW1 and vice versa. You know, the wells communicate back and forth, yet have slight differences in water quality that make the treatment a nuisance.
Yeah.
So there was I guess a third option, but it kind of got shot down. And maybe I should revisit that one, is a blended water supply. So the whole problem with the ammonia is that it takes more chlorine. So you have to crank up, and maybe Adam could clarify a lot of this stuff too. You got to crank up the chlorine. And when you crank up the chlorine, you get disinfection byproducts from it, trihalomethanes. And it's the trihalomethanes that are of the concern, not the ammonia, it's the disinfection byproducts. So the other option, and we hired an engineer, and they thought that they did some desktop analysis, and they thought that the trihalomethanes were going to be too high if we just simply crank up the chlorine. But my argument, my suggestion is that a blended water supply might do it. Like if you go one day on PW1, one day on PW2, you know, and just go back and forth, you know, between the wells. And I don't think we ever really had a full answer for that. I think the conclusion was that they didn't want to take the risk of increased trihalomethanes.
Okay.
So there is a third option. We could study it in further detail, but that blended, it would take a long time to figure out if a blended water supply is going to work.
So when you're saying you're going from one well one day to one well the next day, then you're just dumping it into the reservoir.
Yeah,
they mix together, and when you do your adding, you add your whatever chemicals you have to do, I guess, for well one, the extra, before you put it in that big tank, and then you assume that they're all mixed together well and send it down the street.
Yep. Yeah. So
Okay.
You're going to increase your disinfection byproducts by blending it together. Where we have, like, what the problem with both wells operate okay. They have lots of water quantity. It's the ammonia is just higher in PW1. So it likes that ammonia burns the chlorine, so you keep cranking it up. How a well the system should operate should have 100% redundancy. So in other words, you operate PW1 one day and PW2 the other day, and you flip back and forth between wells. That's how they normally operate. In this system, we rely on essentially one well, or we favor one well, and we could always use PW1, but if we had to use it 100% of the time, if PW2 goes down, then we're into like higher chlorinated water. So it's a nuisance, but it is a serious problem. We've just been lucky that PW2 has performed essentially, you know, perfect for the last 12 years when we noticed that ammonia was a bit higher in one well.
So a question for you too, Bruce, on the toluene that you mentioned and the dry cleaning chemicals that it's picking up. I forget the name that you said it was. Are they still like very minimal? They're nowhere near the maximum, right? Like we're not in, it's just
Correct.
detectable, it's still acceptable, and there's no issue with the ministry?
That's correct. It's not, it's well below drinking water standards.
And it's not in the well, is it? It's just in the monitoring wells.
It's just in monitoring well. Well, it shows up occasionally in monitoring well shallow, but I think it's just the way that we sample. We use one pump and we transfer back and forth, so it might get some residual between the two, but it's not in the deep observation well, and it's not in the production wells. And we've increased sampling of the production wells, the raw water quality once annually, every December, I think, Adam, that we collect samples just to check all these other things, ammonia, BTEX, you know, and iron's an issue too. So now we're looking at all the raw water quality. It's kind of funny that some of these parameters, such as ammonia, we'd never look at them. Just a normal yearly operation. It's not ammonia isn't even on the isn't even a requirement of the Ontario drinking water standards.
Oh.
So, but I guess the answer to your question, that levels are of toluene and what is it, tetrachloroethylene, dry cleaning solvent, are less than Ontario drinking water standards. Even if we were to capture that water into the deep wells, it would still be less than the Ontario drinking water standards. Yep.
Well, that's a good explanation. I'm not sure if we're going to decide anything today or not, but
No, you don't have to decide anything, but I think you're bringing up a good issue. Like we've been kind of focused in on the, you know, the BTEX problem, and it has been a problem, but I think it's manageable now. But we have to get back to looking at the ammonia issue with PW2.
Well, and I think it makes sense what you're saying, Bruce. I know nothing's 100%, but if we were to go, like you said, where the Sentinel well is, where we're getting good readings and it's like well number 2, the chances are probably very high that if you did do a well there, you would probably get the same.
Correct. Yeah. I would imagine it would be the cross between those two wells, which are known to be low in ammonia. So that's why we've been leaning towards replacing the well. And I think we've been applying for grants to get the well replaced. The Green Stream, I believe it was called. I don't know the status of those applications, so maybe Troy might know.
Yeah, and again, don't know yet. We were told that we would know possibly early 2022, so we're still awaiting.
Okay.
And just to fill in for John, so you know, John, when we discussed this, and I think this was a couple of years ago, I mean, the well was probably the cheaper way to go than it was to build another facility, Bruce, that could treat and do it was going to cost us millions and millions, if I recall, wasn't it? What was the treatment option? Would have been way more than just putting in another well.
I think it was. I think that was the cheaper of the option, and that's why we've been focusing in on well replacement.
okay.
Okay, thank you for the really good news there, Bruce.
You're welcome.
Well, a mix of good and bad,
Good and
but we
bad.
are. I know it's taken a lot of money, and you know we're back and forth and getting new answers and everything. But at least we're slowly, you know, getting towards the goal, which is let's get to the bottom of the BTEX and stuff like that. And you have to just do it the way that you're doing it, right? You have to check off all the boxes and go about it the proper way. So
The only last action item I think that's outstanding from the Ministry of the Environment, you know, review was sampling of everything costs money, was the sampling of the Murph well. And I believe Troy touched base on that one. I think we're kind of, it's a beach ball, and they're just kind of bouncing it back to the, county, and the county says, yeah, go ahead and sample. And then the cost of it, then, the township's going, can the county do it? And then they're
And
saying,
what would it cost to do the samples at the Murph well? What are we talking? Are we talking a few $1,000s? Are we talking over 5? And what would you be testing it for, Bruce?
I think around 5, and most of the costs around what include Route 5, we have to hire a well contractor. They have a well that's there that has what's installed in, the early 90s that was never used. So they got a pump in there, left in there. We have to get a contractor. He's got to pull the pump. He's got to make a few improvements to the well. We have to put a test pump in and then collect the samples. So I'm estimating about $5,000, to undertake all that work.
And what exactly are you testing for?
We would, I would suggest we do what's called a step drawdown test. So it's a pumping test. So we do it's a pumping test, and that gives us well performance information. And then we'd have the well wide open that we could always collect. And then during that pumping test, we collect water samples, and we're primarily looking for ammonia in that one. And that one, and obviously BTEX, the two big unknowns.
Well,
So it's a small action item, but it was one of the action items that we put, that the Ministry of the Environment discussed.
Go ahead, John.
well, I do, at the end of your report, I think it was page 49, I counted out about 7 recommendations that you were suggesting that we do. And to me, they were small item things.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking they're probably, I figured you could do all of them for probably $5,000. You know the ones that I'm referring to?
I think they were a list of the action items that,
There wasn't so much of a list, it was just different paragraphs that I read through.
okay.
And it was on page 49, I believe.
Oh, 40. I don't think I went that high.
It was on page 49 of it was right at your conclusions.
Of yours, yeah.
It was at your conclusions.
Yeah, so BOCs, continued monitoring, Blue Sea with PW1. And we did install permanent water level data loggers. So those are all, I agree with you, those are all pretty small items. I don't think I included that. Oh, the MRF, I did include the MRF. I think with the MRF, well, it's going to be the cost of the contractor to get the contractor out there, and that's why I just said 5,000 for that.
Well, I'm gonna recommend that we spend the $5,000, or I'll make the motion, we spend the $5,000, find out what that MRF water is, get it off the table to find out whether there is ammonia in there, or it does have, what was the other thing you were, oh, yeah, the toluene. Let's find out what's in there and then go ahead with these other half a dozen other ones for $10,000, get them off the table, and then that's things we don't have to worry about anymore.
Yeah. And we're basically doing all those items. Like it's like the MRF is one. Increased sampling to, quarterly.
Yep.
Include BOCs, so we cover tetrachloroethylene, and that's in March. And the recommendation, raw water samples, which we're doing anyways. Permanent data loggers have been installed. I just have to visit them and process the data. there is a bunch of the recommendations, but it's spread out over the year too.
Yeah, you're probably going to do them anyways.
Yeah, I think we're going to do them anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that I seen it were recommended, and I don't know if I guess the board should actually, or the committee should actually accept those recommendations formally and pass a motion.
Okay.
I don't know what you feel on that, but Greg.
I think it makes sense. I guess what we've been discussing about the MRF was whether or not the county was going to kick in money. That was the whole issue, right, Troy?
That's correct. I have a meeting on Friday with the CAO and I can bring it up to her, so, with the county, so hopefully I can get some headway. I sent an email out right after our last meeting and I'll be honest, I didn't get it, but I forgot to follow up, so I'll follow up with the CAO on Friday.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying, John. It makes sense. I mean, it's just sitting there and sitting, and if they're not going to pay or whatever, I think it's time that we, get off the pot and we have to, okay, then we're going to have to pay for it, and it's either ruled out completely and we don't have to worry about it anymore, or it's going to be an issue that we then have to bring up with the county, right?
Yep.
Mike?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, but didn't we check the MRF? Didn't we do some preliminary work on the MRF and just to prove that the contaminants weren't coming from there?
No, I think there was concern about PFAS,
Yeah, that's right.
forever chemicals. We can't sample that well because the pump's not in service and it's in our way. Like, we can't put a pump in. We got to take that old one out. But it was there was concern about firefighting foams and
That's right.
two
Yeah.
fires and we did check out, and they never used the firefighting foam, I guess, for those two fires.
Yeah, that's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And just that PFAS, the Ministry of the Environment was concerned about the forever chemicals, and they collected a bunch of samples from the monitoring wells, the Sentinel wells, we'll call them, and they collected water samples from the production wells, and that examination came back inconclusive and really low levels. It was all over the place. I'd say that looking for forever chemicals is difficult because they're essentially everywhere.
Mhm.
So John, would you be okay with if we were to say to Bruce, go ahead with the minor recommendations, and could we hold off until the next meeting about testing the MRF, and Troy can get back to us with an answer of either yes or no, they're gonna cough up half of it or they're not, and then we'll have to make that $5,000 decision?
Yep. Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Okay, so Yolanda, if you can, John would make a motion that we'll go ahead with the other recommendations that Bruce have, that probably, like Bruce and John said, will probably happen over the year anyway, and we will hold off on the testing of the MRF until further discussion at the next meeting. And in that meantime, Troy will strong arm the county. You want us to send the two Johns with you, Troy, or?
I may need them.
Mike's pretty young too. He can throw a fist there if he has to.
Okay,
Great,
so
Councillor Booth. So did John Lobo had moved that?
yeah, can I have a seconder? Mike? All in favor? Passed. Okay, good discussion. Thank you, Bruce.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks.
All that trouble we had all discussed in 5 minutes. That's good. Go ahead, John.
Just one other thing, when Bruce is still there, I was noticing that in the 2022 budget for consulting services, that was still blank. And I'm just wondering, last year we had, I think it was $35,000 we spent on consulting services. I'm just wondering if Bruce would be able to get with our treasurer and give us an idea of what he's going to spend, or his best guess of what he would spend in 2022.
Okay, I think that that'd be prudent for me to provide a budget for 2022. Because I normally do that. I would do that every December, the once a year meeting, and say we're on budget, and next year's budget's going to be X. And
Yeah.
For 2021, it was a train wreck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's good. If you can discuss that with Nicole, and then especially with these minor recommendations that we're talking, if any of them are going to cost a little bit more money, and when Nicole comes back to the next meeting, we can have a more concrete 2022 budget.
Okay.
Okay, so we said that we would receive and file for that, and we did have a mover and a seconder. So all in favor of receiving and filing Bruce's passed? Okay. Now we'll go on to the Lucy one, correspondence from Larry Spira, Lucy re Grafton drinking water system report, operation report, reporting period from December 2021 to January 2022. Be it resolved that the correspondence from Larry Spira, Lucy re Grafton drinking water system report, operations report, reporting period from December 2021 to January 2022 be received and filed, and further that the report be forwarded to the council of the township of Holloman. Can I have a mover, please? Mike, seconder, John. I was going to say Brenda there for a second. John, do you want to speak on this, Adam?
Sure, I can speak on it. From December on, the main thing that we've really had that we operationally was the failure of the PLC backup, battery backup, and the subsequent loss of pressure in zone 1, the boil water order, and the lifting of that from the 11th of December through to the 15th of December. It's resolved. The Form 2 is filed. It's been lifted, so all the notifications have been finished. There has been basic operational work. We have one operator who's been isolating more or less to keep we're keeping our operators apart. Has been working full time in the plant, doing everything from paint to refurbishment, etc. So we're prepping for Lakeland to come and do that work. I don't have a firm date for them yet. We were waiting for notices. I would imagine it will be closer to the end of February or the 1st of March before we get that raw pinhole taken care of, but we are prepared for it. And as we mentioned, the capital conversation, the roof Larry's looking into. I'll be dealing with the dehumidifier when I can get a contractor in to actually give me quotation to move forward on the work. And we were looking to get some quotations on what is around the truck fill station. And that will be in the next month or two as well. But yeah, operationally, the big thing's been our boil water order.
Okay, is there any questions for Adam? Okay, so Adam, I guess you and Larry will then get a hold of Nicole, and you can give her the correct numbers, or as best you can, the numbers that you have for these items. Okay. All in favor of receiving and filing this report? Carried. Number 9, new business for future discussion. Is there any new business anybody wants to bring up? Nothing? Okay. Number 10, the next meeting. The next meeting of the Grafton Water Committee will be held on Wednesday, April the 20th at 3 p.m. Hopefully that's good for everybody, and hopefully, Pat, we will have the other committee members be able to attend then. Okay, and adjournment. Be it resolved that the Grafton Water Committee adjourn at 4:08. Can I have a mover, please? Mike, a seconder, John R. All in favor? That's it. Thank you very much, everybody. Welcome, Nicole. Interesting stuff, eh?
It is. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.